Pinhead in Dead by Daylight is a flawed design and a result of behavior's bad habits, as well as the community's terrible feedback. Now, before you start bashing me in the comments, just hear me out, and then you can start bashing me in the comments so you don't look like an idiot. So let's get started on why this upcoming chapter represents the worst flaws of behavior and why the community gave the opposite feedback of what they should have. Let's start off with the design of Pinhead. It's a cluttered mess that took me forever to understand how to sort of understand the synergy. And I saw this with a lot of other streamers as well, having the same exact problem. This is because behavior decides to throw a bunch of shit together and hope it works. Pinhead is a mix of Nurse's Blink, Deathsinger's Directional Slowdown, Trickster's Overwhelming but weaker Huntress, but with Deathslinger, Clown's Loop Shutdown, Doctor's Max Tier Non-Environmental Cleanse and Interrupt feature, Freddy's Passive, Hag's Player Activated Teleport, and Plague's Negative Effect Trade-Off Cleanse. Do you see the problem? The only original part of Pinhead is the Possessed Chain Summon controls. Yet, that can even be played off as a 3-dimensional blight, but that's more of a stretch. This problem they have had in several instances in the past. For example, Clown's buff was to slightly buff his pink bottles, but mainly just to add a whole nother bottle and a bunch of new features with that bottle and new mechanics. There's a reason why the most notable members of Behavior say that Huntress was their favorite addition to the game, and that's because it represents Behavior at their most flawless. Now you might say, well, there's no more original ideas for them left to do, and to that I say bullshit. So I decided to come up with an original idea that they could have used for this killer and can possibly use for future killers. Imagine, instead of the gateway being a mixed mess that it is, instead it places gateways on the walls or floats aiming towards the direction that you placed it. Now, when a survivor is about to pass in front of it, let's just say, you can use your activate button so it shoots a chain forward and grabs them. Now the survivor has two choices. Either A, they can break the chain and take an injure state, or B, they can go to the source of the chain and take out the hook there without injuring themselves. But if they accidentally use the environment to break the chain, they'll get the deep wound status effect, so the survivors have to make sure they thread the needle in order to be safe and save a health state. Now, the chain does not stop until it collides with something, whether it be an object or a player, so you could line up long distance hooks to loops or generators and deal some massive time consumption. Now, of course, I can see this power being transferred to something like Pennywise's stretching arm, or an exoskeleton animatronic for Springtrap, or even something for an original character. But obviously it's too late for Pinhead, as that time has passed for that power. But there still is things that can be fixed. The PTB is the sole reason why I still have hope for Pinhead. Behavior has to do the unthinkable, and that is to break the current terrible pattern that they're on right now and buff Pinhead without cluttering it even more and making both sides happy. Now, Pinhead's three biggest flaws right now is his passive, the reward ability of the gateway ability, and how fucking boring it is as a survivor. Now let's start with the passive. It literally is just Freddy's passive, but instead of tying together with the killer, with Pinhead, you have absolutely no control over it than other the box, which you rarely find without add-ons. A way to fix this is to give him the ability to use successful gateways to add to the bar. Pretty simple fix. Now that leads us on to gateways. Why give us the ability to use the gateway as far as we can if the players only end up gaining ground? So my fix is to add more hooks to the survivor comparative to how far the gateway goes or the possessed chain goes, rewarding the killer on how accurate and if the survivor was unable to dodge it. And finally, we move on to how boring this killer is to play against. And that's because his passive is literally a constant Freddy swing chain add-on. So the way we would fix this is to make it to where the closer the survivor is to the killer, the more hooks get attached. So Pinhead gets more value in chases, and survivors aren't stuck on gens longer. Now, of course, some things can't be changed, but there is one thing that can't be changed. but was a bad choice of behavior that probably will be my most controversial opinion in this video, and it is... Pinhead was not a good choice. Simple. Now, I know there's some die-hard Pinhead fans losing their fucking minds right now, but hear me out with an open opinion. Lightson's characters serve an extra reason to be in the game other than original characters, and that is to introduce a new audience to the game. More players is better for both behavior and OG players because behavior makes more money and OG players get quicker queue times and more accurate skill-based games. But in the case of Pinhead, he doesn't do that. Yes, Hellraiser is a massive movie with a pretty big audience, but the audience that would play Dead by Daylight because of him are already playing. Pinhead is more of an underground classic. Most non-horror enthusiasts could recognize Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream, and Saw, but most people could not tell you what Hellraiser is. And the majority of Hellraiser fans are fans of other horror classics, so would have joined through those. But now's the time we stop bullying behavior about the things that they can and can't change. But now it's time to bully the community about something you guys need to change. Everyone can have their opinion on killers, but it's not something that should be competitive and demeaning. If you were not aware, during the teasing of this chapter, there were 2 competing IPs that were lined up with the hints that were dropping, and they were of course Hellraiser and then Five Nights at Freddy's. Now, when the hints finally favored Hellraiser, instead of Hellraiser fans being happy, they decided to attack FNAF fans, demeaning them and trying to cement that it will never be added to the game. They tried to bring up controversies of FNAF, saying the creator was openly transphobic, which if you understood the controversy that they were talking about, it was a case of cancel culture because the guy donated to Republicans. That's not transphobic, that's a political opinion. Hell, it leaked that the guy ended up donating more money to LGBTQ charities than all of his political charities combined. And on top of all that, because of the controversy, he retired, meaning he's no longer connected to the series. But the Hellraiser fans, because of how close it was, never wanted to be in the game ever. If you look in the past replies and like the Twitter during the hints, you will see them literally attacking people for supporting it and threatening to cancel behavior if they added it. It's sad, honestly, that people got exactly what they wanted, and yet they still want to pull people down for their opinions. So yeah, safe to say, this chapter so far has been a very flawed chapter.